Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank. We come to you virtually from Seattle, the entire Pacific Northwest, and today we head over into the Rocky Mountain region into Denver for our guest. Listen, if you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, you've come to the right place. This is where we say street smarts and book smarts collide. Hello again, everyone. I'm Dan Weedin, and I'm joined by my very brand new co-host, Vanessa Laughlin. You're going to get to meet her in just a minute. Our guest today, I'm very excited to have my good friend, Betsy Jordyn on. Betsy is a brand positioning strategist and helps consulting and coaching business owners clarify their brand positioning and messaging. She helps them to create a website presence that positions them as sought-after experts. She helps them land clients with ease and integrity and take their place as thought leaders and influencers in their niche. Her mission is to help consultants and coaches monetize their best at strengths and authentic passions to make a bigger difference in the world. Betsy, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the show. We will be right with you. Look, everyone, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. You hear me say that each week. We're on iHeartRadio. In fact, the #3 entrepreneur podcast on iHeartRadio. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube. I like to say we are ubiquitous. Now, before we bring on Betsy, Vanessa, welcome to the show. Not as a guest as you were before. You were such a great guest, and we all of a sudden had an opening. I spared no expense, Vanessa, in begging you to come and join us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dan. I feel like I got promoted, and I am so grateful. And I think I remember the process a little differently. I think when you ask and you make the offer, no one says no to Dan, right? So obviously, I knew that was rule number one. But no, but all joking aside, I'm so happy to be here. This is my first time. I'm going to try to do a real good job for you. I don't want you to regret the invitation.
No regrets. In fact, I was just thinking, I know unicorns mean one, unicorn means one, but we're kind of unicorns. Here we are. We're both Colombian, right? We both have Colombian moms. Actually, we have Colombian moms and American dads.
Yes.
I grew up on Whidbey Island. You, I think, spent some time on Whidbey Island.
Also grew up on Weedin Island.
We both grew up on Whidbey Island. You said the Venn guy. I think there can't be another person. I can't imagine that there's another person who can say, grew up on Whidbey Island. We had Colombian mom, American dad, and we host a podcast. I think we're it. I think we're the only two on the planet.
I think we're a couple of twinning unicorns in that regard. That's for sure.
We can do it in español también.
En español también, claro que sí.
Now we've got to get on to our guest, because our guest today, Vanessa, is a longtime friend. I'm not going to say an old friend because we're basically about the same age, but a longtime friend. I met Betsy Jordyn, I think it was 2009, if my memory serves me correct. We were in Newport, Rhode Island at a professional development event. And I remember running into Betsy in the bar, and we got to know each other, and we found out we had many of the same common things that we liked, including music and all of that. And we've been friends ever since. Betsy Jordyn, welcome to the show. Betsy, I'm just going to ask, this is my leading question. Before you tell us about all the great and wonderful things you do, what do you remember about that first meeting when I met you in Newport?
Well, first off, thank you for having me on your show. I'm really glad to be here. What I remember, of course, is us going back and forth about our 80s tunes. So we talked a lot about Bon Jovi and all the other 80s tunes that we loved. And I also remember us getting clarity on like what our value propositions were. And I remember you going back and forth because you were trying to figure out like insurance or this or that. And I remember us having those conversations.
So tell us before, I think I'm still having those conversations sometimes. Tell us what you're doing now today. What is it that you do to help consultants and coaches in professional services?
I think what I've narrowed it down to is really strategic clarity around their foundational brand and their foundational messages. So I just changed my value proposition on my website where it says something more along the lines of like where your business vision finds its voice. And I'm going to help like really transform and build a strong, powerful foundation for a business using that clarity of what your business is all about and your messaging. I think that's one of those areas that so many business mentors, business coaches just gloss over or skip over, similar to when you and I were at that week-long retreat. I think we spent hours and hours and hours learning about marketing, sales, book publishing, and all that kind of stuff. And I think we spent about 20 minutes on the value proposition. And after that, that's where most people struggle. So I go deep where everybody else sort of goes light.
That is so cool, Betsy. If I can follow up with the question, I'm an entrepreneur, like many of the listeners and of course the guests. And when you can really nail it in terms of the voice of your brand, it is so powerful. But Betsy, it's so hard. It's so difficult. So I'm sure you could spend a lot of time with this, but why do you think it's so hard when people are starting out, especially to find that voice?
Well, there's two different questions. How can they find their voice or find their niche, if you will, or find what their business model is? I think that there's a lot of things depending. Like I work a lot with mid-career professionals, and a lot of times when we want to start a business, it's like we kind of have our formal expertise that we developed through our education and all the years that we worked in a specific role. And then there's like this informal expertise that we really developed along the way. Like we mentored other people or we help people in leadership. Like that's where, Dan, you were at. You kind of had your formal stuff around how do you build an insurance agency or risk agency, but then all the leadership development. And that's where your heart is versus this is what I know. So it's hard to trust that. So there's all that imposter syndrome. Like, oh my gosh, like who am I to really do that? And then there's also the part of like that scarcity fear. Like, well, if I just say I'm all about this, then I'm leaving everything else on the table. So there's a lot of issues, like a lot of it's like a mindset type of thing. Like I think it's usually right there. We kind of know, but we don't really want to know because if we know what we know, now I got to deal with my vulnerability fears, my imposter syndrome, my money fears, and all the other stuff that goes along with it.
So Betsy, let's talk about fear a little bit more. I've learned, I've got grandkids that are 6 and under, and they're fearless, literally fearless. And you both probably remember when your kids were that age. I think Vanessa still are. There's not a lot of fear, but somewhere along the line, we start gaining fears. And by the time we get out of college and start moving, the fear factor continues to rise. And I think it starts hitting peaks when we're into midlife. What is it? What is it about our society, our culture, what we're told? What are the things that lead very talented people to be fearful of taking big risks?
I don't know if it's like the children. I don't like, maybe it's just I have different sets of kids, than you did. But I don't know if we are fearless. Like, I think that we have fear that is embedded in our brains to help us from a survival standpoint,
Right.
And that fear is normal. Like if you would say anthropologists would study every culture and they would say that there's one fear that everybody has, which is the fear of the unknown. So I think that there's a difference around, it's not like, oh, I shouldn't have fear. It's just that, do I let fear paralyze me? Like, what do I need to do? Like, Dan, I remember when you were on my podcast, we talked about your journey. And a lot of it is about trusting yourself. Like, that's one of the things that's really unique for you, but it doesn't mean that you didn't have fear. It's just that you learn how to replace the fear with something else. So a lot of times, like when I work with my clients around the fear, it's not like you don't have fear. It's just, what else do you fear? Like what I look at when I make big risks for my business or what I choose to do, my bigger fear is like, well, what if I don't? Like I'm more afraid of not taking the risk than I am taking the risk. But I have other fears. Like I'm trying to work on my first book right now. And there's a my book is about the heroic journey of the mid-career entrepreneur. So I compare the heroic journey to this mid-career entrepreneurial journey and why it's such a hero's journey. Like, these are a lot of my original thoughts. If I could talk all day long about 5 steps to starting and growing a sustainably profitable business. But when I'm bringing up like my ideas, it's like, oh God, it's the vulnerability piece. So it's not that you don't have fear. Everybody has fear. It's normal. It's just a question of like, do you accept the presence of that fear? Can you look at it as something sort of positive? Like, obviously I'm stepping outside my comfort zone. People who don't have fear, I would believe that they just haven't stepped outside their comfort zone. They're not really in their zone of genius. They're in their zone of safety. But anytime you step outside of that, fear is going to happen. So it's how do you manage the fear? I remember, Dan, what you had said at the beginning, and I'm sorry just to pick up on Dan instead of you, Vanessa, as well, but I know him better. I remember you talking about like, yeah, you had the fear and then you went and hired a mentor right away. That was one of your first order up for bids. You hired somebody and then that person helped you burn the bridge.
So interesting. So it sounds like you probably believe the expression, do it afraid, right? It's like not about going to some kind of magical place of safety or taking away those emotions or experiences of people, but it's more about reframing, perhaps. It sounds like a very emotional and psychological approach that you might have to take with people. Is that accurate?
I look at it like this. It's sort of like I come from an OD consulting background, so I facilitated a million workshops. I've led many groups, and when you are up in front of the group, you are leading the boardroom and you are listening to every single person. It's not like you have to go with whatever that person is, but you are hearing everybody's perspective and you're integrating them and you're aligning them and you're validating everybody's perspective. Similarly, when it comes to your fears, there's a lot of different types of fears around your own internal boardroom. So you picture you have the money fears, you have the imposter syndrome, the fear of being seen, the fear of rejection, the fear of success, the fear of failure. And so those are all expressions of different parts of yourself. And so the secret is to engage those fears without judgment. What are you afraid of? So let's say take the money fear. That's a big thing for all entrepreneurs is, well, where am I going to get the money? If you're talking about small business owners who want to scale up, like they're going to have the same kind of fear. Like I have to go to investors, ask for investments. And, I have to ask somebody to give money to me. So there creates all kinds of things. So then you engage the different parts of yourself. It's like, well, what do you need? What are you afraid of? And then you replace that with truth or support or validation or whatever it is that they need in order to come alongside and be your allies in the journey.
So I want to kind of jump back earlier in your life. Okay. You worked for a place that most kids, speaking of kids, probably would have thought as a dream job. You worked at Disney, right? That's where you did a lot of your corporate work. Talk to us about really maybe from Disney to where you are now. What's that journey been like?
Well, Disney really was a dream job. It's not for what people think. So people think that Disney is like just this creative environment, and that's where all it is. And there is an arm of Disney that is all creative, and that's the Imagineers, or that's in the animation and all of that. I worked in the theme park area, the resorts area. I worked in operations. I worked with the best executives on the most strategic projects. But like a lot of midlife people, my dad had died. It served as one of those big wake-up calls. I had these 2 young kids at home, and I just couldn't imagine working corporate hours and being able to be the parent that I wanted to be. So I quit Disney at that point just because, like, I don't even know if I knew what I wanted to do next. I just knew that I didn't want to work those hours and I didn't want to miss out on my kids. So I left Disney, and then I'm like, well, maybe I will just freelance on the side, and it's like, all of a sudden it's like, bam, I got a client. It's like, cool. Like this sort of manifestation, process of attracting clients really works, like, awesome. And then I had a certain point where it's like, well, it's not working out the way I want. I was sort of capped out. And that's when I decided to invest more substantially in my business. And that's where Dan and I met at that training. And then I invested in my first serious website and I kicked off a consulting business. It made sense. I was a single parent, and that it made the best use of my skill sets. And then I hit a different wall. I had my first big international assignment, and I was traveling and I was in London, doing all of this. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Like this client like flew me out, on first class on an amazing flight. I had my own little pod. I'm drinking my champagne. I called my friend Lisa and she's like, you're living the dream. I landed, got met with a person who, had my name on the little card and got taken to my beautiful hotel. And I called home and my kids were with the nanny. And it was like existential crisis number 2. It was like, I'm living the dream, but this is somebody else's dream. So it took me a while. It's much harder to pivot a business than it is to start the right business the first time. So I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out what that is. Like, well, maybe people want my OD consulting skills. So I'm going to make courses and I'm going to try all these different things. And then eventually, when all of those things didn't work and I hit a wall with my results because I tried to do like, I'm going to train consultants while I'm going to still have my consulting business and I'm going to carry these both next to one another at the same time. And my accountant's like, you can't like close down one until you get the other to be more profitable. And I'm like at this crisis. And then all of a sudden I killed my results. I went forever. Like I used to get like regular contacts, from my website over and over again. And also like nothing, it dried out because I messed everything up. And I was like, okay, I got to do something because now I don't even have the luxury of carrying these things back and forth. And then I just started getting curious when people would call me. I'd ask just a few more questions. What is it that made you think of me that you decide, like what's going on in your life that made you think of me? And why are you calling me? I was on this podcast where I talked about, I don't even remember, like my 0 to 300,000 in the first 18 months story. And I just got a lot of people calling me. And then I just, instead of assuming why they were calling me, I listened. And they all said, I really liked what you said about strengths. And I really want to know how I use my strengths. I really want to know how do I express my vision? How do I come up with my value proposition? How do I do my brand and all of that, which is the stuff that I love to do, the stuff I do on the side. And Dan and I met at that workshop, there were several people afterwards, like I kept working with them on their brand. And so then it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to trust like what's in my heart is what people want. And there's like this beautiful synergy. So then I decided to shut down the consulting business and I went all in on the brand messaging, the brand positioning. And then eventually, I started adding on other services because I saw that my clients needed it. But my superpower is helping people figure out what their strengths are and put it into words. So I'm sort of like the brand whisperer and the words finder. And I just eventually started trusting it.
Well, that's awesome. I love hearing how your entrepreneurial journey went in that direction. We have to pay the bills though, Betsy. We're going to take our first short break. We're going to take that break to hear from today's spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with our guest, Betsy Jordyn, for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to ask her about Bon Jovi. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, and sometimes we could all use a helping hand to navigate through the challenges. That's where Bannister Advisors comes in. Bannister is not your typical professional services firm. They're your go-to support system when facing life's most overwhelming circumstances. Whether it's a health crisis, a sensitive elder care situation, making end-of-life decisions, getting the support you need during bereavement, or taking care of complex estate settlement, the team of navigators at Bannister will guide you through it all. Picture this, a dedicated team of professionals with diverse backgrounds in client services, clinical social work, strategy consulting, hospitality, law, licensed behavioral health, conflict resolution, spiritual care, and trauma-informed care. They've got the expertise to handle it all. What sets Bannister apart is their project-based case management approach that provides stabilizing and effective client experiences. They tailor solutions to your unique concerns, ensuring a discreet, efficient, and appropriate experience no matter what challenges you're facing. Bannister maintains an extensive network and collaborates with world-class partners, delivering outcomes for clients through a compassionate, team-based approach. With headquarters in the Pacific Northwest, they serve individual, family, and enterprise clients throughout the world with remote, in-person, and hybrid models. So if life has thrown you a curveball and you're feeling overwhelmed, reach out to Bannister Advisors, because at Bannister, they don't just manage challenges, they help you navigate life's complexities in the most graceful way possible, mitigating risks and minimizing future regret. And Vanessa, that would be you. I think
Back
you're,
from commercial.
yes, we're coming back from commercial.
All right. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm Vanessa Laughlin. Our guest today is Betsy Jordyn for our next segment, Hot or Not.
And you see, Vanessa, we'll get all of that worked out as we go on. So that was all perfect. Thank you. Hot or not? I know Vanessa knows what this is because she had to go through it. Betsy's probably going to figure it out. This is where Vanessa and I pepper you with questions about business, about life, maybe even about music. And then you're going to tell us whether it's hot or not, and then why or why not. I know you're a Bon Jovi fan. That's why I joke a little bit about Bon Jovi. So hot or not, Bon Jovi, and I want you to talk about their messaging as it relates to how you might be able to help clients.
How Bon Jovi's messaging? Well,
Yeah,
first off,
so
Bon
things like
Jovi, hot. Hot.
hot.
Are you talking about do I like the music or do
The
I like the
music and
man?
their lyrics. I remember you and I talked about
Yes,
the
I
lyrics.
love
So,
the.
yeah, so talk about their lyrics.
I love their lyrics. Okay, so I love like it's my life, it's now or never. I ain't gonna
Yeah.
live forever. I just want to live while I'm alive. Like talking about the earlier segment, we talked about fear. That's always been my go-to song whenever I hit fear. So I would play that song. It's like, okay, well, so I could go this path or I can go this path. It's like, well, it's my life, it's now or never. I ain't gonna live forever. I just want to live while I'm alive. So yes, hot, hot.
Very
Do you
cool. Yeah. And then I've got a question for you, Betsy. Hot or not, everyone has a superpower.
Oh, for sure. Hot, hot, hot. Absolutely. I was just writing about this morning, that I don't know if you could ever really know yourself without knowing your superpower. I think like the journey to trying to understand like our purpose, our soul, God even is all connected with our gifts because we have a certain gift that reflects like an image of the divine, however you think of the divine. But yes, we are all embedded. Like the word genius, or ingenious is like it's like an attendant spirit that you have from birth is like the root word. Hot, hot for sure. We all do.
All
We all
right.
don't trust it, but we all have it.
So I have to ask this one because we're talking hot or not, and it's in January. Orlando to Denver, that transition, hot or not, and I was thinking weather related, but you can talk at a larger scale.
It was a blind side of I lived in Orlando from 91 until last year and did not realize like how significant of a cross country move it would be at the same time of becoming an empty nester. It was a lot. But I'm starting to bond again with Denver. So there's things that Denver have, but I am going back to Florida in a couple weeks because I do miss the sunshine and the sand and the ocean. And the mountains are beautiful though, so I'm starting to bond with the mountains and the trails here.
Great. Well, up next, I have a potentially polarizing among entrepreneurs topic. So, hot or not, social media marketing. How do you feel about social media marketing, Betsy?
It's funny that you mentioned that. I'm just kicking off a new series with my community on social media for skeptics. So, like I think that social media, if you look at it from a standpoint of behind every profile is actually a person, and these are all like these people you can get to know, then it's cool. If you're trying to get on social media just for like, I want likes, I want comments, and I'm just doing it for the vanity metrics, I think it's not cool. And it goes back to the other things that we talked about with the fear is if you like trying to figure out how do I show up authentically without feeling overly vulnerable and exposed. Like that's like a funny little line there, but it's if you're an entrepreneur, especially if you are an entrepreneur who works with, high-end kind of people, like you have to be on LinkedIn. But I don't know if you have to be everywhere else. You don't have to do Facebook. You for sure, if you're a professional, you don't have to do like TikTok and, like you get to pick your place, but the way that you can make it the not part is that the vanity metrics, the how it would be is behind every profile is actually a person.
So I know you coach consultants and you coach other coaches and advisors. COVID, one of the things that came out of COVID were a lot of people decided to start, kind of open up their own shingle and start using their superpowers, understanding them and moving forward. There are a lot of consultants and advisors out there, and you've talked a little bit about how to differentiate yourself. What are some of the things that if somebody listening to you and they're new into consulting, what's the biggest mistake that you see people who are new in the consulting and coaching business making?
I would say it's the same thing that's in the consulting, coaching, and any other business. And maybe this is the Disney background I have, is if you put the spotlight on yourself, I made this mistake. This is what I do. This is what I'm all about. I hope anybody and everybody is going to come find me. That's the biggest mistake. Or consultants and coaches are notorious for being obsessed with their methodology and the way that they do their approaches, and they talk in their own lingo. And they think it makes them sound smart, but it makes their clients feel dumb, and it makes them feel not understood. So the big shift for everybody, and this is my Disney background, is you still have to, a brand is not about who I am and my voice. It's about who you help and the transformation that you create. A brand is a promise that you make that you consistently deliver. So you have to have a person behind it. And so what companies do wrong in general, consultants, coaches, every other business, is they don't get clear on who they serve. So why Disney's so great is we serve families with young kids. Obviously, there's other people who fall into the net, that may not have kids, but they're kids at heart. So Disney's very clear versus like Universal, which caters more to the old, families maybe with older kids or a little bit more edge. So Disney's very clear. And, you look the same difference between Target and Walmart, that they are basically in the same business, but it's very clear that they serve a different audience. And that's why they're able to stand out. So that is the biggest mistake. Consultants, coaches, business owners, entrepreneurs, companies of all sizes, everywhere, is not making it a client-centric or customer-centric organization.
So Betsy, a word that you've used a few times and that seems to kind of be circling back is this idea, of course, listening, but this framing of curiosity, right? Whether it's being a fear killer, curiosity can be a fear killer, or just being open and assuming you don't know the answer, let's say as a consultant, and that maybe that's going to be revealed by the client and by the process that you go through. So I'm just curious, how do you help people stay in a place of curiosity? And if you want to think of that as, let's say, a mindset, it can be hard, I think. So how do you help people navigate that?
Well, there's there's different phases of when people need different types of support. When you're first like at a major crossroads, like this is where I love like the hero's journey, and what is in the hero's journey, like that's really the template. If the people are listening don't know about the hero's journey, that's really the template of all the blockbuster movies we all know and love. That's the story behind, let's say, Star Wars or Harry Potter or Wizard of Oz, all of it. And if you look at every single one of the stories, when they're at that crossroad part, that's when the mentor arrives. And the mentor does a lot of work at that particular moment. They provide them with, perspective. They give them like special tools, like Dorothy got her, her ruby slippers, or Luke Skywalker got his lightsaber. But then the mentor kind of steps back, lets the person kind of like deal with stuff, gets them in the community, and then they'll pop in at certain points in time. So I don't think that people always need like hand holding through a process of staying curious, but where I would say like how you build it is what you're going to create, is really take on that experience of engaging your fears early on and getting curious about that, getting curious about your clients. Those are skill sets that will carry you all the way through. And then you'll keep yourself into that curious kind of spot. But if you're not a curious person in general, like if you have fixed mindset, don't start your own business. Like that's just not for you. That's partly if you're going to pick an entrepreneurial path, you have to be a little scrappy, that the path to our success, I like to compare it more to like an ice skater than what we would think. Like we want to say, I'm here, here's my goal. But an ice skater goes side to side. And this might go to my Disney background. Continuous improvement is a way of life. So I'm always learning. Every year, I completely revamp my website. I update it based on what I learned the year before. And then if I put something out for a couple months and it doesn't work, I'm going to tweak it. Absolutely no attachment to it. You just have to kind of like work on those skill sets. Did I
That's
answer your
right. Thank
question?
you, Betsy. Thank you. That makes so much sense.
Well, Betsy always makes sense. That's why I had her on the show here because she
Aw.
always makes.
Oh, Dan, you have the best taste in guests. I mean, as a former guest myself, I just have to say, impeccable.
Thank you. Thank you. Got to be good. That must be my superpower. Now, my other superpower is going to break, and we're going to have to take I can't believe how fast it's going. We're going to take that second short break to hear from our corporate sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Betsy Jordyn, for the Plead the Fifth section of the show, Betsy and I are going to jump in the DeLorean. She's going to find out where we go when you do. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. And Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our corporate sponsors, Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, BC Fitness Studio, and Port Ludlow Resort. Please visit our website at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs, business thought leaders, and others in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm co-host Vanessa Laughlin. Our guest today is Betsy Jordyn. And for our next segment, Dan, Plead the Fifth.
We're turning up the heat, Betsy. Vanessa and I are going to continue to pepper you with questions. We may throw a couple curveballs. Now, look, you can plead the fifth, but you can only do it once. After that, the gloves come off. I'm full of sports. I know you love my sports, all my sports jargon, Betsy. You're shaking her head no. But anyway, you're going to have to put up with it at least for one more segment. So we're jumping in the DeLorean, and you of course know what the DeLorean is, Betsy. I mean, that goes back to the Future. We're going to take you back to when you were 18 years old, maybe graduating from high school, let's say, and without messing up the time continuum, because we don't want you to disappear. Without messing up the time continuum, you get 5 minutes to give yourself, 18-year-old Betsy, some advice. What would that be?
Pick better partners. So, I would say, if I were going to, that would be the one big thing. Pick better partners and own your worth, and to don't play small, with in order to meet other people where they're at. I'm codependent, people-pleasing whore, so,
Love it. Great advice, probably for anybody. Betsy, I would like to know, and I hope you don't plead the fifth because I'm very curious, what keeps you up at night, or what wakes you up at night if you wake up in the middle of the night?
I'm an idea person. And so it's like, that's a good keeping me up at night or in the morning or while I'm meditating. It's like, I have a million ideas and I just don't have time to manifest them all. But, like ideas like energize me, possibilities energize me. Like just helping, just ideas. That would be what gets me up at night.
Yeah. So it's not a bad thing when it keeps you up at night.
Yeah.
It's more like a good party, right? With all the ideas. I love it.
So I haven't asked this one in a long time, so I'm going to bring this out of mothballs. Plead the fifth, Betsy. Who's your celebrity crush?
Ooh, my celebrity crush. Who is my recent celebrity crush? God, that's a good question. I wish I would have.
And we just had the Golden Globes, so you've got sort of, a red carpet to draw from.
I don't know who my celebrity crush is right now. And I know it's on the tip of my tongue, and I'm usually really fast with stuff like this. I don't know who my celebrity crush is at this particular moment.
Do you want to think about it? Well, yeah, I'll have Vanessa ask her next one. I'm going to give you a chance, Betsy, just because I'm going to give you a chance. You can answer. You have to answer before. It's going to have to come to you before the end.
Oh, darn. I don't know who
it'll
crush
come
is.
to you. It'll be inspired.
Okay.
I'm calling it. But in the meantime, to distract you a little bit from that
I
question.
know who my celebrity crush is. I know.
Go for it.
Stephen Colbert.
Yes.
I love him. I love how funny he is, and I love his heart. I will listen to him every single morning.
There you go.
That is a solid celebrity crush. I hope he's listening right now and appreciates it. So, okay, I want to just riff off with this question, and please don't plead the fifth. I really want to know, when you wake up in the middle of the night with all these ideas, are any of them ever, let's say, inspiring you to start another business, let's say? And if you were to start a different business of some kind, what would it be? What would that look like, Betsy?
I kind of feel like in alignment with where I'm at, so like where I'm supposed to be. So it just would be like more iterations of whatever it is. But really what I want to do in my next iteration is like, I've been at this point in my business where it's like, okay, I've been at this sought after expert kind of level, but it's like, I want to pop into the more the thought leadership. And so it's like pushing myself past that. Like I want to follow in Dan's footsteps and have books. I have a million books in my head, and I want to do that. I want to start taking more of the bigger stages, speaking more, and doing more of those things. So it wouldn't be a different business. It's just more of an elevated perspective.
So
And I want to be an author.
there you go. Well, you're going to be, I think, right?
You're going to be. Dan knows.
I'm
Dan
going
is
to
an
be.
author. He can call it,
So Betsy, I should have had this in hot or not, but talk to us about where you see AI. AI was probably the hot topic of 2023, everything from Chat GPT to whatever else. Tell us what your thoughts are as it relates to business and helping or hurting people who are trying to use it as part of their business.
I would say I have a love-hate thing right now with ChatGPT. Like there's a lot of things that's kind of nice about ChatGPT where it helps with idea generation. It could help you with, like I had one client who needed me to look at this, hugely long video series. I'm like, I can't spend hours on this. So I took the transcripts, threw it into ChatGPT. I got like, order on it. Like I think from that standpoint, it's got a lot of benefits. I think when people like let chat GPT or any AI do all of their creative work, what I worry about is those synapse connections in our brain. When it comes to like writing our own original thoughts, like that cycle time between my own thoughts and getting them out, I worry that it's just going to be standing in the way. So sometimes I spend a lot of time trying to get chat GPT to write what I want. And then I just like, forget it. I'm just going to write it myself, and I could write it faster and way less time, but I'm still building that synapse connection. So that is my biggest fear about AI, is the creative element, that spark of curiosity, the spark of creativity. We're going to lose that, just like a lot of our kids, like they don't have the same discipline that we did in terms of like work habits. For us to write a paper, we had to do a lot of planning, do a lot of research. We had to get, go into the library and get the cards out and, write things out and all of these different skill sets. This generation lost that. How much are we going to lose? And how much, how many times can you see another social media post filled with all the emojis and, the transformative journey? Oh my gosh, if I see one more thing of unlocking your potential or unleashing your potential or something with some sort of weird extended, like, sailing metaphor, it's like, no. So yeah. I have a love-hate. You have to have it. You have to know how to use it, just like you have to know how to, search things on the internet. At the same time, we can't let it become a crutch and lose our creativity and our humanity.
Betsy, I could not agree with you more. You basically just articulated very well how I feel about it as well. But again, it is kind of a polarizing topic. I'm always interested to hear what people think. Okay, Betsy. So for our last question, plead the fifth. You've done a great job. You haven't used the plead the fifth, hopefully, at all. This is a fun one, Betsy, to wrap things up. What would you do on a treat yourself day?
Ooh, a treat myself day. Well,
yeah, let's say Stephen Colbert heard this podcast. He thought, oh my gosh, she's such a fan. I'm going to send her, off on whatever she wants. I'm going to take care of it and cover it just to show my appreciation. So what are you going to tell Stephen Colbert's team of how you want to spend that day?
Okay, well, if I'm in New York with Stephen Colbert, so that's put me in a certain place. Like if I'm at the beach,
well,
I have a different
it's with
day.
or without him. He's given you the option, so he can come along if he wants.
No, Stephen Colbert is asking for my involvement. I'm going to get Stephen Colbert. So I want to go be backstage at his show,
Awesome.
and be able to watch the whole thing. And then I want to have dinner with him. And we're going to have like lots of long talks about all kinds of really, really cool things. And then maybe we'll hit a Broadway show afterwards. And then the next day, because he knows everybody in New York, he's going to hook me up and I'm going to be on The View. And I'm going to be able to sit with those women and we're going to have all of these like really cool talks about all kinds of things of the news of the day.
Okay,
Get Stephen Colbert's there.
That sounds very exciting, and let us manifest that in 2024. I'm here for that.
So I
So
do know that Stephen Colbert listens. I know he's a shrimp. He's
huge
got to be,
avid
right?
listener.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan, he's been trying to get on as a guest forever, right? But you have to keep your standards high, right?
He's got to wait in line behind he's got to wait in line behind Betsy.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
just so Stephen's clear, like I understand he's married and he's happily married, and I want to invite his wife to be a part of it. I don't want to be a threat or anything like that. I just love like the way he thinks about things and his sensitivity and all of that. So
It's a
if he's listening,
platonic crush.
it's a
Totally
platonic crush.
wholesome.
So if he's thinking and he's listening, and it's like, oh, she's not going to be one of those weird fangirls, who's going to look at me like I'm a soap opera star, then let's just clarify that. But that would be really fun.
Keep it friendly and professional. That sounds wonderful. So Betsy, thank you so much for being a guest here on the Shrimp Tank today. For our listeners, those who want to get in touch with you or learn more about your company, how can they get more information? Where should they go to learn more about you and what you do?
Well, for sure, my website. You can find me at betsyjordyn.com, and Jordan's with a Y. So just in case you're listening and you don't see the show notes, there's another Betsy Jordyn that gets all my stuff. You could just head on over there. I have a whole bunch of freebies. So I've just organized my freebies to not overwhelm people. So there's a couple quizzes that you can get where you can get your customized business building library and your own playlist and all of that based on exactly where you're at. And I also have my Discover Your Superpowers quiz. So that's going to be really important because no matter what, if you're a consultant, a coach, personal brand, or if you have a different type of business, you still need to know what your superpowers are to know what kind of leader you are. So if you're a CEO of a small business and you're a visionary, for example, then you have to know there's a lot of cool things about visionaries. Like we have a lot of ideas, but then we have shiny object syndrome. So you might need some support. So that would be beneficial no matter what phase you are, what kind of business you have, and where you're, whatever size your business is at.
Well, that is very cool. I will definitely be checking out the freebies myself, and I will let you know how the quizzes go. They sound more fun than quizzes I might remember growing up, but I really look forward to checking those out. So for all our listeners, make sure that you check out the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle and wherever you get your podcasts. So whether that's iHeart, Apple, Google, Spotify, or many of the others, they're all covered by Shrimp Tank. Please follow us on our show's social media pages as well on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And thank you.
Betsy, thank you very much. Sincere thank you. I know we're probably, at least at some point, it's been a year and a half. We'll have to find ourselves in the same spot again at some point, but great to have you on today. Happy New Year to you, and try to stay warm over there in Denver. Okay.
Thank you.
Vanessa, you hit it out of the ballpark on your very first at bat.
I'm not getting fired, Dan.
No.
You're gonna have me back next month to help co-host. I can't wait. I know we got some great guests coming up this year.
I think I'm gonna double your pay. I think you just earned a raise. But anyway, no, in all honesty, you were great today. Thank you so much. Looking forward to having you on all the shows coming up. And everybody, thanks for joining us, and do exactly what Vanessa said. Like us on our Facebook page. That's where you can live stream us every week. Our next show will be Wednesday, January 16th. We have a reschedule going on, so I don't know who our guest will be, but I do know that Monica Black will be my co-host. So join Monica and I next week. In the meantime, be safe, be well, and be prosperous, because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond, and the